everyone, Jairek Robbins here. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of JRCtv. This week we are at Strength Camp with Elliott Hulse. Florida. If you haven't visited, this is definitely a place you want to come visit at some point in your life. But Elliott, thank you so much for taking a moment to join us here and share a little bit of wisdom and insight with us.
Sure, thanks for reaching out, Jairek.
So, in getting started, I was listening to some videos this morning, and I hope it doesn't creep you out that I was researching you and digging through your stuff. And obviously I ran across all different types of videos of yours online and different mental trainings and physical trainings. I think obviously one of the big ones of strength versus bodybuilder to see who could move that tire was pretty fun to watch. But I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing with our viewers just some background on who you are. I know your parents originally were from Belize, and how did you get into where you're at now? If there's just a simple way to describe that for people.
Well, my parents came from Belize, and my uncle, who grew up in my home with my parents, was a martial artist. He was a gymnast. He was an all-around athlete. And being raised in a home where you have someone that athletic, it was almost like having Superman rear you, you know. And over the years, he taught me how to strength train because I wanted to become involved in sports, football in particular. I earned a football scholarship to play at St. John's University in New York, and I developed a love for strength and conditioning. I really developed my personal self-esteem through strength and conditioning. I wasn't really a great student. But when I started lifting weights and I started setting goals and achieving those goals, I realized that I can be a lot more than I thought was possible for me. So I fell in love with it as a form of development for athleticism, but also as a form of personal development. And I decided that this is what I wanted to do for a career. It was my vocation. I knew immediately that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, is to teach people how to get stronger.
That's cool. And when you say teach people how to get stronger, obviously here at Strength Camp, it's a lot of physicalness, but I've seen your stuff online. You do a lot more than that for people. It's not just physically stronger that you focus on. It's mentally stronger, emotionally stronger. I mean, you could even say spiritually stronger to an extent, because you help them really solidify who they are and grow that. It's miraculous to see. How did that journey start for you? Obviously, you were learning from your uncle. You got into sports. You were physically pushing through. You were getting into goals. But was there any turning point where you started to realize it was a lot more than just the body? It was a lot more than just the physicalness of what was going on there?
Well, like you mentioned earlier, my parents are from Belize, and if you know anything about the country of Belize, it was a British colony until about 1989, which is like yesterday, essentially. And so the culture is a mix of Europeans, natives, and Africans. You know, they brought African slaves over. So here I am as a mix, a conglomerate of everything that kind of is around us. Never really had the ability to pinpoint what I am, which is really what I'm getting at. You know, growing up in a suburb of New York City, you know, an Irish kid knows he's Irish, and that's it. You know, an Italian kid knew he's Italian. The Jews knew they were Jews. The Haitians knew they were Haitians. The Jamaicans knew they were Jamaicans. The Puerto Ricans knew they were Puerto Ricans. I didn't know what I was, and nobody else knew what I was. You know, so it was kind of it was a hankering question that I was often asked. You know, what are you? And one that I posed on myself and went into investigation. You know, who am I? And I think anybody who at some point asked themselves that question, because I think we all do at some point ask them, who am I? You know, for me it was very superficial and obvious when I was a kid, but then it evolved. Many of us reach it later on in our lives. We start exploring the many dimensions of what makes us a human being, you know, and when you start going down that path, you realize that I'm a lot more than just this. I'm not just what I'm seeing in the mirror. I'm not just what you see. I'm a mind, I'm a spirit. I'm multi-dimensional. So I started moving into the realm of trying to discover who I am at a more, at a spiritual level. You know, I came across the work of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell at a very young age, and it really supported me on that journey.
Yeah, that's interesting. For someone to say, I wasn't very good at learning or school, to have such a passion for learning things that really describe who we are as human beings, though. It might have been just the topic. It
Right.
sounds like-
I realized that I do have a passion for learning. It just I wanted to learn what they weren't teaching at
Yeah.
school, right?
That's interesting. It's something I grew up around as well. You know, Dad was a very bright student. He didn't get to finish high school. He graduated, but he didn't get to finish only because he ran into some trouble with Grandma, where they got in a fight and she kicked him out of the house and held him out of school. And that was his punishment. You can't go to school. Most kids, they force you to. And it was interesting. And 700 books in personal development and mind growth and spirituality in a year.
Wow.
It was crazy. He's insane.
Yeah.
In a great way. And what's interesting is I grew up in the environment learning from him of all the life lessons you needed. And I was lucky enough to do both, where I got to go to college and learn those life lessons. And what's interesting is I was always meet people along the way who they would see themselves as, oh, I'm not a learner, oh, I'm not into this. But like you said, you find the right topic and you get passionate about learning. You get passionate about growing. You get passionate about finding everything that's in there. That's fascinating. So it's interesting that it came down to spirituality and who you are and the depth that sparked that for you. We did have a question. I'm going to throw it in earlier. I was going to save it to the end. But someone was asking, in that space, when you started to develop, what were some of your favorite books that you ran across?
Oh, I was just thinking as you were speaking that the first book that I ever came across, you mentioned 700 books. Well, it starts with one, right? The book was Man's Search for Himself by Rollo May. And if I remember correctly, he was a physicist, but also a philosopher. And again, it was just this hankering question that I think has haunted mankind since recorded history. It's like, what are we? What are we doing here? What is the meaning of all this? So that book, I think, set me on my journey. I was also fortunate enough to grow up in the age where the internet just started taking off. And we had something called Napster back then. Way before YouTube, way before Spotify, way before, what do we have? Podcasts. Way before ebooks, there was Napster. And that file sharing allowed you to get access to audios that people just had on their hard drives all over the world. And my brother and I came across Alan Watts. And he and I would just literally, I remember one summer in college, just sitting there next to him, and we just played one right after the other, where he described all of these Eastern spirituality ideas that I had never heard, never came across before, and just soaked it all up. I mean, literally changed my mind in a matter of months.
Wow.
So there was that, Osho. I began reading Osho very early on because, again, he would talk on topics of getting to know yourself and transcending what you think yourself to be. And Ralph Waldo Emerson has also been very supportive. His words and his poetry touched me deeply at an age where I think most of us are trying to figure out what to do in life and what we're allowed to become. And he was very encouraging that trusting yourself is a good idea. Yeah. So those are probably the most influential books and people in that stage of my life.
That's awesome.
Sometimes think that we have to identify with one or the other. Like you're supposed to be one or the other. Like why not both?
But how to make it both?
Yeah.
The tricky part. Because I think touching on that topic of when someone's so extreme in one area of their life, like they can push so hard, they can achieve goals, they can go places, they can get stuff done. Many times I've seen this pattern in very successful business friends, even my own family, where they hit a point where they decide they're going to go make something happen in life. Whether it's making $1 million, building a company, touching 1 million lives, changing the world in some way, and they just go. And they take more flights than anyone ever takes, they do more presentations, they close more deals, they grow a bigger business than anybody, and they hit their first $1 million, $2 million, $5, $10, $20 million, $100 million in their year. But what's interesting is because they haven't adopted that Eastern side you were just talking about, they go so far this way, and it's almost like life, Mother Nature, the universe, kind of kicks them in the face. Because cancer usually hits them at this point, or a tumor in their spine, or something that causes them physiologically to have to stop. Or if they don't want to stop, to immediately have to adapt this other way to balance who they are as a human being. Because if they have that spiritual, the metaphysic, that deeper aspect of who they are, they know the balancing techniques of the spirit, of the mind, they can outweigh themselves and all of a sudden keep it flowing.
Yeah.
And, mysticism and the thought process, everyone from Deepak Chopra to Wayne Dyer, and thoughts create the body and the symptoms. And it's like tumors disappear when you can align your mind right. Speaking of that, Have you ever had a moment where you pushed so hard and hit one of those times where it's like life woke you up, and people call them a hard time, a challenge? Have you ever, like, what's the toughest one you've ever gone through in life where you might have pushed too far one way and life kind of just kicked you? And then what did you do to pull it back into balance? What did you do to pull it back into harmony?
It's interesting, yeah. I'm pretty close to having one of those experiences. I just came off of a retreat. I had to take some time off. I literally took 8 months off from working completely.
Wow.
You know, I knew I needed to do it. I gave myself permission to do it, but I let myself get that far down the line. And you mentioned that person who goes really far in that direction over there where you're pointing.
Sure.
Where they're winning, and the world loves a winner. And the more that you're winning, you feel good. The more people like the fact that you're a winner, and they support your winning. And it's like you become addicted to, and other people become addicted to your winning. And I think that's a part of what happened with me. It's like I'm winning, I feel good about it, and everybody is cheering me on. So you just think you got to keep going, and then the responsibility the sense of responsibility that you start having for all the people that are cheering you on, be it your family or a million people, becomes so overwhelming that you either blow yourself up, burn out, or you take that time. You got to create some separation and realize that that's not you. It's just a reflection of you, and that the real you needs some solitude, needs some peace and quiet, needs some healthy habits that support your physiology, because otherwise your physiology you'll blow up.
Yep.
You'll get that tumor, like you said.
Yep.
I didn't want to get that far.
So you decided the way to recoup was to take 8 months off.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even give myself
Did it help?
a time period. I just said, I'm stopping. I stopped cold turkey.
Wow.
And it was challenging because, again, you become personally identified with the work. Most of us, it's just, I guess it's normal, or maybe I'm making an excuse for myself, but I became personally identified with the work that I'm doing. I became personally identified with what the world perceived me as, and it's a dangerous thing. So it was because I had the Eastern understand. Those seeds were planted in me early on, and I knew that I was out of balance. I had faith and trust that if I yielded to nature, that nature would take care of me, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
That's awesome. And what would that thought be for someone who's young? And this is tricky. We run into this a lot, where someone who's young, they're just starting, they're really excited. Either they're trying to push through school, or they've just graduated, they're out in the world, they're trying to get the job, or they're trying to excel at that first job, and they feel as if they're burnt out, because for them, this is harder than they've ever pushed. But if you were to take someone who's 15, 20 years older than them and look at them, they're like, the kid's barely getting started. Like, what he thinks burnout is like the minimum excuse to be at this work level. What would you say to them? Because they do need to tap into some of this Eastern thought to rebalance their mind. And it's almost like they need to raise their bar of perception of what they believe hard work is. And there's a huge audience worldwide that really just doesn't know hard work. And they didn't grow up in the gym. They didn't grow up physically pushing themselves. They didn't grow up competing to be on sports teams. They grew up where mom and dad paid for literally everything. And they're struggling to get a job right now and wondering why no one will hire them. When basically the moment they're offered a job, they call in and they're like, well, I know you said come in Thursday on my first day, but I have something I have to do that day. Is it okay if I start on Friday instead? What do you say to them? Like, what's the key component for getting started?
Remember once Alan Watts said that it was a part of the tradition in the East not to teach young people the mystical ideas. Don't start teaching spirituality to young people. Wait till they're about 30, 35. And he said because they'll start getting caught up in the mysticism and the spirituality, and they'll forget that they live here on earth. And when you're 15, 16 to 25, 30 years old, you've got to be here so that you can develop your warrior and achieve something, as opposed to getting caught up in the Buddhist ideas that achievement is, there's no need for achievement. Yes and no. You might want to go hard for a while so that you know what detachment feels like. Attach. I say attach really hard. be completely attached and go as hard as you can. And what that will allow is for you to have the contrast to know what detachment actually is. A lot of you guys, like, you're adopting the idea of detachment, and you never really attached to anything anyway. You see, so you're detached from what? So there's that, and there's just biology. And studying some of the work of Robert Moore, he talks about the development of our king, warrior, magician, and lover, and that we go through stages, biological stages, as we evolve as individuals, where we're summoned to exercise different parts of our character, that king, warrior, magician, and lover. And again, for boys, it's between the ages of teenage, 17 and 27. You're supposed to exercise that part of your character so that you have it, you have the experiences associated with it, and you know how to use it for the rest of your life. So you're really exercising a muscle that you're going to need to use later on. And if you guys are if you're getting attached to detachment, and you're not being devoted, disciplined, decisive, then you're not going to have those character traits that are associated with success in any realm. You know, so it's a tricky balance. The lover then comes after, according to Robert Moore. He says that teenage girls, it's like a flip-flop that nature has done to us. Teenage girls are in lover mode completely. Yeah. Teenage boys are in warrior mode completely, or should be. And then at about 35-ish, mid-age, we do a flip-flop. Me and my wife are a perfect example of that. I told you how she deadlifted 200 pounds today.
Wow.
I'm like all into yoga now, and I'm like stretching and breathing and taking walks on the beach.
Yep.
She's in here deadlifting 200 pounds.
Wow.
And it's interesting to see that now that the lover is developing in me and the warrior is developing in her, and it's just this natural sort of biological evolution of character traits that support us in being well-rounded.
That's amazing. That's very cool. I guess for people tuning in, this is super helpful, first off, so thank you so much for sharing with us. Another question I'd have is just thinking about where people are, they're getting started. There's a lot of coaches on here that watch. There's a lot of younger guys who are trying to figure things out in life. What would you say, just a personal question, what would you say is one of the greatest life lessons you've come across? Through all the experiences, all the places, all the opportunities you've crossed paths with, what's just a life lesson for you that really stands out, that if you wish you would have known earlier? I don't think everything happens exactly as it's supposed to. So if you didn't know it before, you probably didn't need to at that moment, even though you wanted to. But what's something you wish you would have known earlier that showed up at some point in your life that if you were to be able to pay forward to someone listening, you just feel it's something important to kind of pass on to others?
It's going to sound real simplistic, and it's a saying that's repeated over and over again, but you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
It's true.
And essentially it's like, when you're faced with decisions, you could deliberate all you want, gather as much information as you want, you could scheme, you can plot, you can wait till the stars align, but really you don't know what's going to happen, so just make a choice. I think a lot of times we decide on a particular goal or a particular path, and we think that we can actually predict what's going to happen. And it's like, well, it's pleasing to believe that, and it makes a lot of sense to set goals and whatnot, but even still, you don't know what's going to happen, so don't waste too much time overthinking your decisions. Just make a decision and then make that decision right. I think what's more important is that your character is strong enough to handle the circumstances that come with the decision that you make, rather than making the right decision.
That makes sense. What are some key aspects to building character for people tuning in?
Well, the first one for that is courage. Courage, because part of the reason why you hesitate on making those choices is because there's no courage there, no heart, faith. There's many different ways to take this statement, but we're living more and more in a faithless world, and it's because we want data for everything. If there's no data, there's no proof, there's nothing there for anybody to do. And that's kind of unfortunate because it takes the mystery out of life, and that's what makes life so interesting, is the mystery. Not knowing. That's what keeps us on our toes. That's what keeps us stimulated. That's what keeps us going. If somebody gave you a roadmap and said, this is exactly what's going to happen, just stay on this path, you'd probably be bored. Right?
Sounds boring.
Yeah.
That's true. Very cool. Very cool. It makes sense. Courage. And what about those people in a moment where, I'm just thinking of different people I know that tune in, that watch, for leadership, for someone who, I know I have a very good friend, he watches all the time and he shares this with his whole community, and he's a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. So he has a pretty large community of people, and he's always trying to help them. How do you keep your mindset on track? How do you stay focused? How do you really deliver the best version of yourself consistently? And there's a lot of things we've touched so far that hit those points. But for that specific group of people, what would be your best insight?
Which specific group?
So a group of people who's in kind of like the armed services. They're in a place of service. They're in a place of hard work and focus and dedication and consistency. And for some of these people, that roadmap has kind of been laid. It's like, hey, you have to show up and do this every day. And some of them might be loving it. They'd be like, oh my God, I love it. I don't have to think. I show up, I get it done, I deliver. Other people, they're counting the moments until they get to release themselves into some freedom of doing something else.
Yeah.
What do you say to that person who's halfway down the path? They see the rest of the path, they know where they need to go, they've been instructed on what needs to happen. What do you say to them for the rest of the path? Is it grind it out? Or is it tough it up? Or is it, my thought is, I always try to help people fall in love with the path. If you're halfway and you haven't figured out how to get to the other end yet, fall in love with it. What would you have to believe about it? What would you have to think about it to literally just love the journey? Even if it's hard, it's not fun, it's greasy, it's ugly, whatever. What would you have to believe about it to just love it and to enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if that would be your best answer, but I'd be curious from someone who has so much strength and trains other people on that strength, and I'm guessing endurance comes with strength to some extent. How do you help people hit that maximum endurance point where they feel like they've run out of juice? How do you help them re-tap into more?
It's interesting that we can find joy in the smallest of things that we do. It's really a choice. Joy is a choice. So if you find yourself working mechanically every single day, but your mind is elsewhere, either on the past or in the future, or something that you got to do later on, as opposed to just being completely present with what you're doing, you sort of miss the joy that's available to you and the gratitude that can be conjured up because of what the present has in store for you. It's interesting, one of our new interns here, Dougie, he's a great guy. He has a gratitude journal, and he's always talking about the things that he's grateful for. And then he goes like this. He says yesterday, he goes, I'm going to do a gratitude rampage. And he starts pointing out all the things, like just in this one area, that he's grateful for. I'm grateful for this. And he starts talking about why he's grateful for it. I'm grateful for the lights. I'm grateful for these trees. I'm grateful for those clouds. Look how beautiful they are. I'm grateful for that cricket. Oh my God, what a beautiful song. And listening to him just put a smile on my face. I was like, man, there's so many hidden gifts around us right now in this moment. So if you're halfway down a journey and you're busy looking over there, you're going to have anxiety. You're going to be depressed. But if you stop and take a look at everything that we could be grateful for right here, right now, even the smallest of things, there's these ants. And when we can't get rid of these little ants here, but we attempted once, and then it was like, wait a second, they're awesome, they're beautiful, look at them, they're working their butts off. And we just sat there one day and we just watched them, and they're busy, and they're incredible, and they're so small, and they're so cool. And I want to be one for a moment. Like, what is that guy doing? He's running around in circles, he's going really hard, and there's his buddy over there. You could really, like a kid, just fall in love with the smallest of opportunities and circumstances and ants that the world has to offer us.
That's awesome. So learning how to fall in love with the moment, learning how to get lost in the curiosity of what's totally present right in front of you. That's awesome.
Yeah, curiosity, yeah. And we don't get too much of that anymore because we know everything. If you don't know something, years ago it'd be mystery, and it kind of stimulates it a little bit. It keeps you on edge. Now we just pull out our phone and we go, Siri, why do ants run around so much? And like, oh, you've got an answer. When you've got an answer for everything, life just becomes boring. So curiosity, we could use a little bit more of that.
That's an interesting way to look at life. When you have an answer for everything, life becomes boring. Keep topics that you don't know the answer to on purpose, only because it gives you the space to make life fun,
Yeah.
make life magical, make life the unknown.
A lot of people don't act because of that very same thing. A lot of people, like, you're willing to put yourself on camera and speak, you know. A lot of people hesitate to speak or write anything down because they want to be right. I'm far more interested in the pleasure of just talking. I could be completely wrong. I mean, it could be crap coming out of my mouth. I'm having a great time. It doesn't matter. Maybe someone finds this interesting. Maybe somebody gets joy and pleasure out of it. Maybe somebody hates me, but it does not matter. You don't have to be right to get going.
Nice. So that's great advice. Just get moving.
Mm-hmm.
Get moving. And I think another thing that was in there is doing something you love, doing something you enjoy, and doing it because you love it, because you enjoy it, and allow it to naturally carry you forward, regardless of what's thrown in your way or at you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's very cool. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I'd love to, a couple questions. First, anything else you'd really want to share with someone tuning in? If they've gone this far, they're certainly interested. And anything personally that you'd want to share with them. And second, I would love the people to know more about Strength Camp and you online and where they can find you and how they can get involved. Because I'm certainly, since my friend Eli introduced me, I'm certainly digging through videos and being like, wow, this is cool. And I'm listening to myself. I'm like, shit, that makes sense, man. And I'm digging it myself. And I grew up around all this stuff, but it's awesome to find someone with another perspective, another vantage point, even a new way of explaining something you might have heard before. Because like you said, it sparks the concept in your head where you're like, damn, I forgot about that. Or, I know that, but I really don't know it. I've just thought about it a bunch. I haven't done anything with it. Shit, I got to do that one. And it gets you moving again. So I love that. And I love people tuning in here to figure out how they get over there and start digging into your videos. Because you have 5 years worth of videos now?
7 years.
7 years worth 7 years worth of training. I think we're only on season 2, so we're babies compared to you online. So 7 years worth of training and all different topics, a variety of working out physically to mental training to really the endurance of how to expand who you are. I've seen on there, even some fun ones. I still go back to the bodybuilder versus the straight man trying to flip that tire. It's kind of fun. So there's lots of variety on there. But start with the lesson. So if someone, you just felt they were out there for you, and I don't know what the lesson could be, as simple or easy or fun or weird or zany as you like, but whatever you thought someone tuning in just needed to hear for their sake, for their life, for what they're about, what would you want to share with them? There was just something that was there.
I like to say that your body is your mind. And living in a day and age where information is so available to us and we can read and we can think and we could conceptualize about absolutely anything that we want to do, we become so ungrounded and far removed from the vehicle by which anything that's going to be realized actually happens. Anything that's going to be materialized happens through the body. So if you have lofty plans, lofty ideas, you also need to have a healthy body. If you're going to think better, a stronger body is going to help you think better. Your physiology will be more balanced. If you plan on achieving goals, whether they be in relationships, whether they be with career, vocation, a healthy body is going to support you. I think the majority of people exercise to avoid another heart attack. My doctor says I ought to. Or in order to achieve an aesthetic goal, like, I want six-pack abs or I want bigger arms. But why not exercise for a smarter brain? Why not exercise for the fact that your body is a vehicle that carries your spirit? So I guess my message is exercise, eat well, take care of your body, because it does far more than put on six-pack abs or satisfies your doctor's demand. It helps you become a stronger version of yourself, your full self.
And if people are looking to become the strongest version of themselves, how do they get involved here with you?
I would say just if you enjoyed some of the things I said here, just watch my YouTube videos. I've got 2 channels. I've got an Elliott Hulse channel and a Strength Camp channel. One is about questions and answers, and the other one is going-ons at the gym here, more fitness-oriented.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us to sneak in here.
My
I
pleasure.
know you have people coming to join you just in a few minutes or hours here. So thank you for joining us, and we'll make sure to spread this as far and wide as we can around the world.
My pleasure. Thank
you,
you.
sir.